Okay, how fun is this? I am in my car. In this video, I'm going to be doing my December wrap up. I will explain why I am in my car right now. I filmed this video a few days ago, and that video, I had a headache the whole time and I could not focus. So when I started editing that footage, I was just a mess and it was all over the place. I don't have a headache right now, so I'm going to film this video in my car before I go into work. Sorry that it's very unprofessional, but I figured I could use a little bit of change of scenery anyway. Let's go ahead and get right into this video. In 2021, I have read 100 books. I'm actually in the middle of the 100th book right now, and this video comes out tomorrow, the last day of December, and I think I'll finish my book by tomorrow, which is kind of cool. I never in 1,000 years thought I could reach 100 books, and I did. I set my reading challenge goal on Goodreads to 80 books, and I obviously surpassed that, so I'm very, very happy about that. I'm very proud of myself. Next year, I don't know if I will try to get to 100. I might just accidentally get there, but I want to enjoy the books that I'm gonna read, and I don't want to rush to get to 100. The first book I read was The Spanish Love Deception, and I read this book actually kind of at the end of November, and I mentioned it in my November wrap up. I hadn't finished it at that point, so I didn't talk about it. I ended up giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was a great book, and I felt all of the butterflies. I got all the tingles like I usually do when I read contemporary romance, but I did have some irks about it, and I will tell you what those are now. This book is about Lena and Aaron, and Lena's family lives in Spain, and her sister is having a wedding, and she needs to find a wedding date to prove a point, basically. So she tries to find a wedding date, and it's not working out. Her coworker Aaron, who she ultimately hates, Aaron suggests that, hey, why don't you just take me? I'll go to Spain with you. I'll pretend to be your boyfriend. So it is fake dating, and it is enemies to lovers. But my thing with enemies to lovers, and what really bothers me about some books who claim to be enemies to lovers, is that it's only one-sided. And I like it when they're mutually hate each other. But in this book, it was very one-sided. Lena hated Aaron for one specific reason, but Aaron didn't really hate Lena. He just thought she had an attitude towards him, and that was it. So that was kind of bothersome. I like it when there's a mutual dislike, and there wasn't. The steamy, sexy scenes were 10 out of 10 amazing. There was a lot of sexual tension for about 50% of the book, and then you finally got some trickle of some spice here and there. And finally, we have a male character who knows how to dirty talk. I was very impressed with Aaron's dirty talk. Besides the spice and besides the lack of enemies to lovers, I didn't really enjoy Lena's overthinking, but I think that contributes to the length of the book. The book was 400 some pages, and for contemporary romance, that's a dense book. It could have been edited down a little bit because you were so much in Lena's head. It's kind of obnoxious. Because of how long it was, we got so much of Lena's overthinking, and that just wasn't my favorite thing in the world. But that's okay, because I still ended up loving the plot. I loved the book. If you like fake dating, you'll really like this book. I think it did a great job on the fake dating aspect. That part they did amazing, but I didn't, again, enjoy the enemies to lovers. So that is the first book I read in December. The next book I read was Wicked Lovely by Melissa Marr, and I'm not going to talk too much about this book because I only read the first book, and I believe there's 3, maybe even more. I'm not quite sure. This book came out 10 years ago, so it is a pretty old book, but I really did like it. It reminded me of... What did it remind me of? It's basically about this girl named Aislinn, or Ashlyn, I can never remember. Ashlyn can see Fae. So she has what's called sight. So she can see through Fae's glamours. And because of this, she's in a lot of danger because if any of the Fae find out, they can take advantage of her. And so her grandmother raised her, and growing up, her grandma was like, don't tell anyone, here are the rules. And she literally had a list of rules. And she was really guarded from the Fae world, even though that she saw them consistently. And then, of course, there's a Fae prince who comes to her school and is like, hey, you have to be my wife to save the world. And that's kind of how it goes. It wasn't bad. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. My mom was begging me to read it. It's one of her all-time favorite books, and I did like it. I liked it a lot, and I will end up reading the rest. I just don't want to right now. So the next book, Colleen Hoover, sorry if you don't like her, but she blew me away with this one. It was Layla. And when I went into Layla, this book, I was like, oh, it's gonna be a really cute small town romance with a girl named Layla. But it is not. It is not that at all. When you pick this book up and you read the back of the cover, you've got to really pick up on some small details that are in the synopsis. Like, I was not expecting a paranormal romance. Okay, this is a romance that involves a ghost. And I'm not going to go into any more detail about it because I don't want to spoil anything, but I loved it. I also gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I think I would suggest this book to all different kinds of people. It's kind of a slow start, but once you get to a certain point, again, I'm not going to spoil anything. Once you get to a certain point, you're like, wow. And then of course there's that Colleen Hoover twist, and I was just mind blown. I don't catch on to things very quick, so a lot of stuff surprises me. So by the end, I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. So I really ended up liking this book. When I found out it was a paranormal book, when I had read like a certain part of the book, I was like, oh, this is what kind of book it is. I was not looking forward to finishing it, but I'm so happy I did. It was amazing. There are some minor trigger warnings with this book. I suggest when you read any Colleen Hoover book, you look up the trigger warnings. This one specifically is anxiety, PTSD, traumatic experiences, kind of that realm of triggers. So just be careful. But this book, definitely high on my Colleen Hoover list. Loved it. So the next 2 books, I know I'm going to get squashed for, but I need you to hear me out. I read Clockwork Angel and Clockwork Prince. I ended up giving Clockwork Angel 4 stars, and I DNF'd Clockwork Prince. Now listen, before you come at me, like I feel like a lot of you are probably yelling at the screen right now. I loved both books. Okay, I got about 70% of the way through Clockwork Prince. It's a DNF for now. I was in a very stressed out place in the middle of December. It took me about 7 days to finish the first book. And I don't know how long any of y'all have been watching my videos. I average a book every like 2 to 3 days. Like I'm pretty quick with them. 7 days is a really long time. So when I read that book, I was like, okay, that was good. I gave it 4 stars. Great. When it came to the second book, Clockwork Prince, I was on like day 8 and I was like, I've got to cut it here. It was more so because I was in a slump. And I get in these really short slumps where I'm like not enjoying the book that I'm on, or it's taking me a really long time, so I forget what I'm reading. And then I'm like, okay, I need to put it down. Like I just need a fresh start with a new book. And that's exactly what happened with Clockwork Prince. But I will not be reading it again. That was kind of confusing. I'm definitely going to be reading this whole trilogy again. I just could not at this time. The next book for sure got me out of my reading slump. It is top 5 2021 books for sure. The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I freaking loved this book. 5 out of 5 stars. And this is exactly how you do enemies to lovers, because there was a mutual dislike. Both of them did not like each other. It was about Ethan and Olive. Because I've struggled kind of finding the right enemies to lovers, this book just impressed me and blew me out of the water, because I was like, finally, they hate each other and it's mutual, and I like that. Even though that Olive kind of hated Ethan, and Ethan was like, I don't know why you hate me, but I'll hate you too. That was kind of the vibe, you know? So they just mutually disliked each other until they were forced to go on this honeymoon together. If you don't know what The Unhoneymooners is about, it's a popular book, so I bet a lot of you already know, but it is about Olive's sister had a wedding, and during this wedding everyone got food poisoning except for Olive and Ethan, because they didn't eat at the buffet, so they didn't get the food poisoning that everyone else did. And since Olive's sister got food poisoning, the bride, Ethan and Olive ended up taking this honeymoon together because they were the only people who didn't get sick. Obviously from there stuff happens, you know, whatever, all the romance stuff. I will say the one disappointment I had, even though that it was 5 out of 5 stars, was the lack of smut. There was so much sexual tension and it felt really like steamy and spicy at times. Spicy scene, like that scene that's supposed to be at the end of the book, was cut like short because they didn't want to go into like detail, you know, but I like it when people go into detail. It's either that or porn, you know. So There wasn't enough of that in my opinion, but still, humor of this book made me laugh so much. Loved The Unhoneymooners, definitely recommend. And I got sent Love in Other Words by a friend of mine from Bookstagram, so thank you, Jane. Very excited to read that. But let's get into the next book. Top 3 Colleen Hoover books I've ever read. It was the most emotional book she's ever written in my opinion. This one tore me open. I bawled my eyes out, and at the end it was just, it took me back to high school. And this book is Regretting You. And this book is actually really unique. I think it's in 2 perspectives, a mom and a daughter, Morgan and Clara. And Morgan got pregnant with Clara really young, at like age 17, with her high school boyfriend and Clara's dad. There is a big tragic accident that I will not disclose in this video because I don't want to spoil it, but something happens and Carla and Morgan are kind of thrown in a loop, okay? Something really, really fucked up happened. It's going through their past and current relationships, more so Morgan's past relationships with, like, you know, growing up, and then Clara's current relationship because she's in high school. I will say, like, I legit got butterflies at the end of this book. This is like the most perfect ending. In the last 30 pages, I was like heart beating, so good. One thing I did want to say about this book is that Clara, the high schooler, was a little too adult in my opinion. She was too intellectual. Not in a bad way, but she was very aware. For example, she would notice things about her mom that her mom, being a 30-year-old, should have noticed herself. I really don't know how to explain that. She was just very aware for a 16-year-old girl, like very mature, and I think it could have been dumbed down a little bit for Clara. Like, she was just a little too mature, and for what she just went through, I think she could have thrown a bigger tantrum than she did. The ending was worth it. It was so good. Please pick this book up. The next book I'm really excited to talk about too, because I don't typically read these kind of books. I read Star Mother by Charlie Almberg, and this book was so unique, so different, and really short. Like, it was such a quick read. I think I read it in like a day and a half. Very easy read and not too complicated for being a space-oriented fantasy book. So this book is about a girl named Saris, and Saris was, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but chosen to be a star mother. And in this world, star mothers are bowed down to, holy people, but they are basically sent up. For example, Saris is sent up to the sun, or like his world, or the sun's little castle, to have the sun's child, which is ultimately a star. The thing with star mothers is that when they birth a star, they do not survive, but Saris ends up surviving, which is like mind-blowing for everyone involved. Everyone's like, why are you still alive? How is this even possible? And so after she gives birth to her star, she asks to go home to Earth. And once she's back on Earth, it is 600 years later. And that's all I'm going to say right now. I just want to say one thing that really stood out to me also with this book is Saris and her growth. Her character growth by the end of this book, it was amazing. You could physically like see with each page her growth as a character, and that meant a lot because I feel like sometimes authors kind of leave out that a character, especially a young character, can grow through like really traumatic or like really dense events in their life. So I really appreciated that Charlie incorporated character growth. This was the cutest little palette cleanser, just what I needed to get out of my little slump. I gave 4 out of 5 stars. Really liked it. If you're into fantasy, I think you'll really like it, especially fantasy that revolves around a very whimsical plot. So definitely go pick this book up. You won't regret it. The 99th book of this year, basically, was Storm and Fury by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and which means currently my 100th book that I'm reading is Rage and Ruin, which is the second book in this series. So this is actually a spinoff with Zane. So Dark Elements, I read earlier this year, is a trilogy with Layla, Roth, and Zane. It's kind of a love triangle. And this is the spinoff for Zane. But Trinity is the other main character in this series. I gave Storm and Fury 5 out of 5, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna give Rage and Ruin 5 out of 5 because I love it already so much more than even the first book. So this book is about a girl named Trinity who is losing her eyesight due to a rare disease, but she's a complete badass. She grew up with wardens, and wardens are these creatures that were sent from the heavens to protect people from demons. Trinity grew up in a compound full of wardens, but she's not a warden. She is a human mixed with something. I'm not going to give that away, but she's known as a trueborn, and I'm not going to tell you what a trueborn is. You have to read the book. Trueborns are super rare, like super, super rare, almost to the point where I think she's the only one. The thing with trueborns is that demons can use trueborns to become more powerful, I'm pretty sure. So the compound that she grew up in, their main job was to keep Trinity away from anyone else. Like, they had to protect her at all costs. No one knew that she was a trueborn, but like a few people. I don't want to say anything else, but Zane gets involved somehow. There's also another guy named Misha that I don't want to talk about. So yeah, there's just a lot that goes on in that series, but I'm on the second book right now. That is it for my December wrap up. I gave 4 and 5 stars to every single book in December, which is kind of rare. Follow me on Goodreads if you want to see my ratings and my reviews. All of my social media will be linked down below in the description. If you've read any of these books, please comment down below what you've read and your opinion on it. Next week's a fun video. I'm excited to film that one, so I will see you guys later.